Welcome. Yeah, well, I was talking to actually the listeners, not you there, so you didn't need to reply. But I was...
I mean, I'm the one who's listening
right, I understand.
to in the moment.
Like, logically, you feel like I'm talking to you, but there's like a third
So you're like
actor
kind
here.
of breaking the fourth wall here?
It's a that's all we do.
I mean, I talk to you during the podcast.
Yeah.
Are you not talking to me during the podcast?
I think we're talking to everybody during the podcast. I don't think... But this isn't
This is very meta.
This is not a fictional show, so we actually break the fourth wall as a whole concept. This is Thinking Like a Lawyer, by the way. This is the Above the Law show. I'm Joe Patrice from Above the Law. That is Catherine Rubino. We are here once again to check in on some of the big stories of the week. As always, we'll run through those and take some time to thank our sponsors throughout the show: Lexicon, LexisNexis Interaction, Contract Tools, and Nota. So, yeah. But we'll get to hearing from them in a bit in characteristically fun ways. And
how are you this fine week?
You know, good. Snow is getting to be a little bit of a problem. Like, I find snow magical, but at a certain point.
So I don't mind snow the way my life currently works. I don't have to do a ton of shoveling, whatever. It's fine. It's annoying, but it is what it is. But there's just a lot of snow. And it doesn't feel like it's ever actually going to end. And I guess it's okay because it's still February. And in my mind, February is kind of peak snow time, so it's fine. But it feels like it's going to continue through March. And March snow is the devil.
It's
March
insane.
and April snow is unacceptable to me.
Right. Well,
but I mean, I really have no choice in these things. So
I mean, at this point, it's snowing most of the way through the week. There's still snow on the ground. It's just, I mean, I guess it doesn't get a chance to become slushy and unpleasant when there's just a new coat of it every day.
I suppose there's little things we should be thankful for.
Yeah.
Small miracles.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's a small miracle.
I'm dying to find out what you think a small miracle is.
Coming back from a pandemic. So how have law firms weathered previous economic downturns and come out stronger on the other side? LexisNexis Interaction has released an in-depth global research report confronting the 2020 downturn, lessons learned during previous economic crises. Download your free copy at interaction.com/likealawyer to see tips, strategies, plans, and statistics from leaders who have been through this before and how they've reached success again. So, what's up?
Not too much. Things have been, I don't know, have they been pretty busy in your mind?
Yeah. I was actually transitioning to, we're having some meta issues here. That I was transitioning to maybe you could talk about a story or something.
Oh, I guess I could.
Yeah.
So I guess one of the bigger stories, there's actually a couple of different stories that we had this past week, and that is the virtual hearings, speaking of the pandemic, but all the virtual hearings getting disturbed by all sorts of shenanigans. I think you had a story about folks having sex on camera during a virtual hearing. I had a story about a public court hearing that was disturbed by a cavalcade of dick pics.
Yeah, but yours wasn't even a court hearing, though, right? It was just like a community board or something?
It was a high court hearing in England. It was about proper ownership of a football, quote unquote, but it was actually soccer, obviously, because it was UK. Ownership of a team, and there's going to trial the end of the month, whatever, but there was some public hearing as a result. And despite the admonishments of the judge, people sort of took over the Zoom. It wasn't a Zoom, I believe it was a Teams meeting.
Okay.
And took it over. A bunch of dick pics were sent. People started making raspberry noises. One of the lawyers involved called it a circus atmosphere. It was high comedy.
You know, I mean, and maybe this is a problem with Teams. I've already learned how in Zoom you put those people as observers, and they don't get to talk unless they like specifically reach out and get themselves recognized.
I don't use Teams much myself, but it was definitely a disturbance.
Yeah. Well, so meanwhile, there was also a lawyer in Peru who got in some trouble because he decided to start having sex during the hearing of like a gang lord. So it was, it wasn't like it was one of the boring hearings. Like I could understand if it's like a trust and estates, like probate thing. Like you Sometimes you need a distraction. But
so you're in favor of sex during a court hearing if it's boring.
I'm not necessarily in favor.
I think Jeffrey Toobin agrees with you.
I'm saying nice. I'm just saying I understand. This one, though, it seemed
it's not
like
recommended in any event.
And yeah, so it had a weird wide-angle view on the old Zoom, and I think must have thought he was off frame, but was not.
Must have, right? Must have thought that they were off frame.
Maybe, or,
he's into it.
I mean, I guess there's also that option. But yeah, no, I'm...
disturbing.
My takeaway of it was just, you don't get to come back from that as a crime lord. I feel like if your violent street gang is most known for the time the lawyer had sex during your hearing, you're not tough anymore. You don't have
you
cred.
Have such a badass attorney, of course. Even your attorneys can't help but have sex all the time.
It's unclear whether it's his attorney or if this was somebody else. But
okay.
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah, I just feel like
maybe
this is the
ultimate. Maybe we just don't know enough about crime lords in general.
Obviously.
I mean, most of my crime lord information comes from Daredevil.
Yes, well.
Kingpin is basically all I can think of.
Fair enough. Yeah, so we've got that handled. So that's what was going on. I hope that lawyer managed to get paid, though, before everything went down. You went to law school to be a lawyer, not an accountant. Take advantage of Nota, a no-cost IOLTA management tool that helps solo and small law firms track client funds down to the penny. Enjoy peace of mind with one-click reconciliation, automated transaction alerts, and real-time bank data. Visit trustnota.com/legal to learn more. Terms and conditions may apply. So, let's go back. We were talking about how depressing the snow can sometimes be. Is there a story maybe you want to talk about from this week?
There were a couple, actually, about...
God help me if you pick the wrong one again.
We had a couple stories about mental health issues in law schools.
Oh, did we now?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. It's interesting because I thought I set you up for that perfectly a little while ago, and then we didn't hear about it. But I
didn't see the connection before.
Super eager to hear about it now.
Okay. So... we got a bunch of tipsters from Columbia Law School who reached out to Above the Law, which if you have similar issues, you can always reach out, tips@abovethelaw.com. We're always available on that email address, about a bunch of issues that they were having at the law school. This Columbia Law School Student Senate had done a survey in the fall semester, and mental health issues were just seeing a very sharp increase kind of across the board. Folks who were experiencing both an increase in mental health issues as well as feeling like the administration was largely, or if not largely, at least partially responsible for an increase in the pressures regarding this. And it's because there was big changes made to the schedule because of the pandemic. There was a shortened schedule. They'd eliminated reading week for the spring semester. So it went right from the end of classes right into a bunch of days for classes. And so...
For exams.
Sorry.
Yeah, right.
So that was a problem. And there was a petition to the administration of the law school to try to change a bunch of for the spring semester, to make some changes to kind of alleviate some of the stressors that folks had. And Dean Jillian Lester had sent out an email being like, yeah, things are hard.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it wasn't great. But to Dean Lester's credit, after getting kind of dragged about all this, we did a follow-up story where the dean and a bunch of the administrators met with representatives of the Student Senate. They had a list of, I think, 10 or 11 different demands, went through them all, made progress on a bunch of them. A couple of them were like, this is why we can't do it for these reasons, or these are the other ways we follow up. And it was really a very productive conversation. And so it really does seem like things are moving forward in a really good way. But it just kind of just goes to show you why having an active dialogue between students and the administration is always important, but particularly in these kind of crazy times.
Yeah, I feel like this is a theme that we've been hearing about from a lot of different angles. And I'm assuming that Columbia is not the only law school. I assume there's probably...
Yeah, I did another story about Michigan Law School having similar issues. Yeah.
And I think it's probably impacting almost all the law schools. And there's an attitude amongst those of us who went through hard things to assume that every hard thing that we did is the same as every hard thing everyone else is going to do. And I think a lot of folks who went through law school, and law school is stressful and difficult. Query whether or not it always has to be, but it was.
Mhm.
And at that point, we come out on the other side and say, well, no one should complain. I went through it too.
Yeah, law school sucks. Next.
Except you didn't go through it because you didn't have spring break canceled so that you could shove more classes in because you couldn't come back after the holidays fast enough because there's a deadly pandemic going on and they got rid of reading week and they're having extra hours every day of the class to make sure it meets.
Lots of law schools moved early interview week from the fall to January now, so those are actually overlapping with classes for a lot of kids.
So now you've got to interview while you're doing all of this.
Yep. And it's a lot. Plus, there's the whole, pandemic aspect of it. Folks are getting sick who are in law school or taking care of, family members who are sick or dying. One of the stories from Columbia that came out was somebody who was like, I found out my grandmother died in the middle of taking an exam, and there was sort of no mechanism to kind of deal with that. I just kind of had to cabinet it off and do the best I could. And is that grade really reflective of who you are as a lawyer, or potentially as a lawyer? No, probably not, right? Hopefully this is not kind of the permanent state of the world is the pandemic. And, these are sorts of things that people are going through, and there doesn't seem to be a really great across the board response. And so administrations have to kind of deal with these on an ad hoc basis, but be responsive and be able to make changes and not just say, hey, this doesn't fit in our accepted formula of issues.
Yeah, it's almost as though, and I'm sure there's a psychological term for all this that is better than what I'm about to say, but it comes from a place where we cling to less the idea of how stressful it actually, the impact, the experience of how stressful it may have actually been for us.
Mm-hmm.
And we actually instead cling to the idea that stress existed and therefore it's all the same. Like, I went through something stressful, so it must be the same thing that you're going through, as opposed to thinking about this. And this has come up with the bar exam situation too. I mean, a lot of obviously, most of the folks who write in to us about bar exam situations have been on the side of, this is ridiculous that we're going forward with this during pandemic times and forcing people into big convention centers while all this is going on.
As sympathetic as folks are, they're often not sympathetic for things like diploma privilege.
Yeah, but most people are writing in like that, but we do get detractors who write in, and they write in stuff like, almost exclusively, the detractor's position is, I mean, the bar exam was never a cupcake. I took it and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, but none of the scenarios that you took it under are close to the same experiences happening here. We get that it was annoying and stressful, but that mere fact does not translate across to every bad situation.
Absolutely. And the other thing I'd say is that we know the legal profession is terrible when it comes to mental health issues, right? They have an above average incidence of mental health issues, of substance abuse. Study after study has proven this. And rather than say, hey, that means that we need to make big changes, to what we think of is acceptable and how we deal with it, kind of industry wide, particularly older folks are more likely to say, well, I did it and I survived.
Yeah.
And that is really problematic.
Yeah, this is kind of broken recording, but the event that they survived is almost never the same as what's going on here.
But I'm saying, even if it were, we know that has led to problems. Dealing with mental health issues the way the legal profession has is problematic. We know that. We have all the data that proves that. But rather than say, oh, that means we can make changes, people are like, well, I'm still here.
Yeah.
Which is not a great way to look at mental health issues.
No.
And hopefully, the newer generation of folks are really into making these changes and can potentially make them over the long term.
Yeah. And the profession is, going to change over time, hopefully, as opposed to just being locked down as what it's always been. But, there's just new ways of dealing with things that people can hopefully deploy to make the job better. One of those is if you work with contracts and don't use contract tools, you're missing a lot. Save time, make more money, and do a better job for your clients with Contract Tools by Paper Software. Contract Tools is the most powerful Word add-in for working with contracts. Thousands of lawyers all over the world rely on Contract Tools every day for every kind of deal. Visit papersoftware.com to watch a demo and get a free trial. As a special offer to podcast listeners, use coupon code LTN2020 to get 1 month free. That's papersoftware.com and LTN 2020.
Speaking of returning back to kind of the profession and how we get back. Oh, yeah.
You're going to try. You're trying segues now. Okay.
We're working on it. We're working on it. It seems like a lot of folks who may have been involved in the Trump administration are eager to get back to sort of the life they led before.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, with any turnover of an administration, there's the mad dash to get back to the private sector.
Sure, that revolving door has always been criticized.
Revolving doors are what they are.
Yeah.
But this, it really has taken on something of a feel of a less of a revolving door than a game of Duck, Duck, Goose or whatever it is, where like the key is to not be the last one to turn off the lights because they could get bad. Obviously, some folks like your Rod Rosensteins and all got out early as more stories came out of their culpability in certain things like the family separation, which Rod has definitely been involved in. He's already moved on to his big law firm and seems to be getting by. Obviously, Jones Day is taking whatever riffraff. They actually don't really care whether or not. I mean, you really could have just killed babies, and they're willing to take you. But as we saw with, they announced most recently that they brought on Chad Mizell, who is more or less an architect of that separation policy, and they brought him on.
Well, if you don't mention it in the press release,
they don't mention it in the press release, which actually I thought was a bold move for Jones Day. I was like, this shows some degree of growth. In the past, you would have said, plus, look at what he did here.
Proudly.
Yeah. But no, so they try to get by in the press release without mentioning that. So some folks are getting that treatment. Others, though, I mean, we already had that conversation about the DOJ attorney who may not be able to go back to Kirkland because because of the story of him attempting a coup. But we also see...
That is a problem.
Yeah, we also see that Pat Cipollone, White House counsel, and Eric Hirschman, formerly of Kaswitz, but now mostly retired, so probably not needing to come back. But they were featured in this Axios story from a week ago about their role in arguing with Trump and Sidney Powell having this big knockdown, drag-out fight in the White House about what to do.
Right.
It was very interesting.
Right.
I read
Axios has done a whole series about kind of these like fights at the end of the Trump administration to kind of really, put a microscope on what actually happened behind closed doors.
Yeah, see, but from my perspective, I didn't care as much about what went on behind closed doors. I assume sausage making is awful. I actually saw that story as way more interesting from the perspective of who's the source of this and how desperate are they to perform some kind of a career.
To be clear, there's a lot of, this was not me going on as opposed, to make clear their role in the...
There's all anonymous, it's all anonymous sources. They just all happen to be anonymous sources that talk about how Hirschman was not only in the right, but heroic and courageously standing up for what's right. Obviously...
Yeah, like it's his positioning in the room accurate.
Yes.
And,
obviously, you don't know. They say anonymous sources. It may not have been him, but whoever it was really wants him to come out looking good. So I just read the story from a backwards looking angle of who's the unreliable narrator in this story, basically. But it's fascinating and kind of, I thought was interesting from a legal perspective of like, how do you frame your career? I mean, a lot of being a lawyer is the ability to tell stories, you would say. And we had this revolving door stuff that we've been talking about on the show and in the website for a few weeks now. But this was one where you actually got to see the narrative shaping in fashion, in
real time, sort of.
Yeah, in real time, you got to watch as somebody tried to explain vis-a-vis a reporter how they're okay to get a job on the back end.
Yeah, and I guess we don't actually know where a bunch of these folks will wind up. It's,
of course.
It's still kind of early in that, but it will kind of be interesting to see what their next chapter is and the ways in which this article potentially helped pave that path.
But yeah, no, they there's a lot of lawyers in the government and especially, obviously, there are partisan jobs out there, non-political jobs, but there are also a lot of political jobs who do a lot of the main administrative tasks around the White House. And yeah, we get to see how they get their new jobs. On the subject of administrative tasks.
Oh, yeah.
Have you thought about
I
streamlining
have.
administrative tasks before? Well, let's hear from our friends at Lexicon.
Here's a message just for the attorneys out there. So you passed the bar, joined a firm, or even built your own. Now are you finding out that you're doing more administration than actual law practice? Lexicon can help. Lexicon is a legal services and technology provider with over a decade of experience streamlining administrative tasks like timekeeping, HR, billing, client intake, and more, so you can focus on maximizing billable hours and increasing client satisfaction. Call 855-4LEXICON or visit lexiconservices.com/go to learn more.
So, last week was also Legal Week Year Tech New York.
I'm not okay with this kind of growth of legal tech.
Week creep.
Yeah, Legal Week creep.
Yeah, so it was what used to be Legal Tech New York, one of the annual legal technology shows. Big one here in New York. Always kicks off the
Calendar.
conference calendar, if you will.
Yeah, it's Midtown.
Yeah, we have it in Midtown. It's great. They changed its name to Legal Week a few years ago. Now it's legal. It's not Legal Year. It's Legal Week Year.
That doesn't even make any sense.
Yeah, it doesn't. But they're just going to keep having more sessions till like June. That's how it's going to happen.
First
it's
of all,
just never going to end.
That is not a year. That is a half of a year.
That's true. I wonder if they're going to try to push it beyond that. We'll see.
Sure. But also, I mean, there are other conferences, and I don't know why it needs to all go under this umbrella.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to run one that in March, and that's obviously when we would otherwise go to like ABA Tech Show or something. Yeah, so it's interesting. Anyway, they had their show. It was quite interesting. I didn't get to go to as many things as I usually do because my computer exploded midway through. So I had a legal tech. I had my own legal tech issues.
The epitome of legal tech issues in the middle of it.
But yeah, so we did that, and we had a lot of conversations with various vendors about like what's up with them and where they're going. So very interesting. Don't really have a ton to get into about it here, but
What's one of the keynotes though?
Stacey Abrams gave a keynote.
Nice.
Yeah, and to I assume balance that, they made Chris Christie give one too.
Both sides.
Yeah, it was kind of that sort of situation.
An awful trend of modern political discourse. But.
Yeah, well, neither of them seemed particularly legal techie. Stacey Abrams at least kind of tried. She kind of would steer the conversation back to, and a lot of what lawyers do is solve problems, and so that's what I was kind of trying to do with, and made it feel like it made sense. Yeah.
What about Christie's?
It did not do that. It was just like an extended cut of him any other time you see him. I will say that the interviewer, lets a few things slide that I wouldn't have necessarily, but deserves full points for going directly to the question. So I don't think anybody's ever asked you directly, how do you feel about Charles Kushner getting a pardon? And that was some fun. That was the price of admission right there.
Well, what was his answer?
He was very diplomatic about it.
Okay.
But he's clearly seething. And it's one of those situations where, you say the diplomatic thing and now is the time for the conversation to stop, but you just can't stop yourself. He's like...
just can't end it.
No, it actually, it doesn't bother me. It won't take away the work that me and my team did in a very important case, but the president has the ability to pardon whomever he wants, and so we just have to take it. Wait a beat. And then he's like...
for it.
Then he's like, and honestly, this was one of the worst criminals that we ever dealt with in my office. He did this, and he did this, and the witness tampering was of a scale that I have not seen, and we've done mob cases. Then, realizes this is too much, then wait a beat, say something okay, and then goes, and I mean, obviously, given his son-in-law, it was clear that this was always the goal of the Trump administration, was to get Charles free. And I'm like, it was worth it. The guy couldn't quite stop himself from unveiling
that
the
interviewing
seething.
skill of just waiting is sometimes...
That's a great practice tip.
Yeah.
It is a very good one from
Cross-examination,
depositions and so on. Yeah. Sometimes just wait a second and the uncomfortable silence will drag out the right answer.
Most people want to feel uncomfortable silences, and when you're trying to prep a witness, you tell them not to sort of be put off by silence. But lots of people will just try to fill that silence.
Oh,
and
it's a
you'll get there.
natural
Yeah,
impulse,
it's
yeah.
natural. Yeah.
But no, so that was very good and entertaining. But the rest of it was kind of black. But I was greatly entertained by him trying to keep himself politically under wraps for a conversation about Charles Kushner. Yeah, anyway,
That was fun.
yeah. So yeah, that was a fun little legal week, and with all that, we're gonna have stuff come up this week. I assume.
Every week, in fact, that's kind of what
never gonna
happens.
end.
Life keeps on going.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you all for listening. You should be subscribed to the show to get new episodes. You should give it reviews, stars, write something, shows you're engaged, and that always helps people know that the show's out there. You should be listening to The Jabot, which is Catherine's other podcast. You should listen to the other offerings of the Legal Talk Network. Check out Legal Tech Week if you enjoy the legal tech conversations, because that's the Lawyers Roundtable that I do on Fridays.
Oh, you remember the name of it?
Yeah. Well, in fairness, the name has always been a little fuzzy about. We internally called it the Round Table, and that wasn't what it was on services. And you can watch that show live. Actually, it's like a Zoom webinar that you can register for live, and then you can listen to it as a podcast afterwards. But if you watch it, then you would have been able to participate in the side chat that went on the whole time, which turned the whole show into a Ham's Beer Appreciation Hour.
You're there for that, I can imagine.
I mean, I was largely a ringleader of it, yeah. But yeah, no, it was, it's always fun to listen to, but it's more fun to participate, I suppose. You should read Above the Law, I think is fair. You should follow us on social media. I'm at Joseph Patrice. She's at Catherine1, which is the numeral 1 at the end of there. She holds up her finger every time I do that, as though you can see her hold up the number 1.
It's more to remind you.
I've already said it at the point that you do that, though.
I usually do it before.
Anyway, so with all of that, I think we're done. Thanks to all of our sponsors, and we'll be back next week.
Peace.